Welcome. You found us. Whether you've hatched here, found us by accident, or just woke up out of some type of a dream. Welcome to Fishing Without Bait, a lifetime without definitive expectations, where we're looking for individuals who are looking to create themselves rather than find themselves, to look at life and reality from another perspective and view life as an epic adventure. There's no admittance fee required, only the honesty, open mindedness, and the willingness to try. Join our conversation and get acquainted with an eclectic roster of guests. Expect the unexpected and get an assist into exploding into your life with full impact mindfulness. Good day, friends. I'm Jim Ellermeyer. I'm a behavioral health therapist. And as always, the producer of this program is my friend and co host and assistant producer, Mr. Mike. And today we're joined by a very special young lady. As you know, we love to hear recovery stories. We're not necessarily the horror part of it, but how people have dealt with adversity in their life and are standing and staring life right in the face and living life as life comes at you. And today we're joined by Miss Emily. Welcome, Miss Emily.
Thank you.
So tell us a little bit, just a little bit about yourself. If you had to describe Miss Emily, if there was a movie of Miss Emily, what could the title possibly be?
I don't know. I'm a weird person, so I'm not really sure.
So the title might be A Weird Person?
Yeah.
Okay,
hmm
cool. So what makes a weird person, Emily?
Probably how I'm acting right now.
So what you're sharing with people out there is many who maybe can correlate and resonate with how you're feeling right now. Maybe feeling a little bit awkward, maybe
Yeah.
feeling a little bit confused, maybe feeling like, gee, I really don't fit in here. I really don't belong. What do I say? I just feel tongue-tied. And sometimes people feel like that in their lives, Emily.
Yes.
So would you say, and please, what we're trying to relate to is particularly other young ladies and other young men or whoever may feel that they don't quite fit into life. Did you ever feel like you just didn't quite fit in?
Yeah, my whole life.
Mm. So could you share a little bit more about that? Share how it feels to be sometimes when you're feeling like you're on the outside.
Especially growing up, like having all the things, all material things that I could ever want, and still feeling like something was not right, and being in a group of friends that were popular and doing all the cool things cool people did, but still something was just off and feeling out of place no matter where I am in life, pretty much.
Okay, so what you're saying is I'm sure there's many people out there who could correlate and say, yeah, that's how I felt when we feel like you're talking about having the material things, meaning,
Like the right clothes that the kids are wearing and the right shoes and all the latest toys and all that nonsense.
okay. And what you're saying is that you were also had a group of friends who would be considered the in people or the cool crowd or,
And
okay.
still feeling like I didn't belong anywhere. I didn't belong with the popular kids, or well, actually I did belong somewhere with the druggies.
Uh-huh.
That's where I felt like I belonged, I guess.
Okay, so you felt comfortable in that crowd
Yeah.
because
They were all weird like me.
Okay. Well, as we often talk about, there's something that drives behavior. Okay. And quite often it's a feeling of being awkward or not fitting in or being maybe a few phases out of what is called norm.
Mhm.
Okay. And I would probably have a hunch, Emily, that when you were in middle school, high school, you were what we would call played an imposter most of the time.
Oh yeah, definitely.
So tell us about that.
Just always pretending to be something that I'm not and someone that I'm not just because I wanted acceptance. Basically, I wanted everyone's approval,
Mm-hmm.
but in reality, I didn't even have like I couldn't accept myself.
Okay. Now we're getting down to really core issues. We're stripping away things. And what drives behavior is that low self-concept, low self-esteem, the identity formation. So during this time, what were you thinking about yourself, Emily, when you looked in the mirror? What did you see?
Probably nothing really worth anything. I've always been like a worrier, so I was constantly living in fear of everything, and I didn't like how no matter how I looked on the outside, what I saw in the mirror was not the same as what other people saw.
Mm,
Because I just pretended everything was okay all the time, even though I was like a worrier to the point where when I was very little, my mom got me these little worry dolls, and if I was worried, I would like they're made out of matches, and I would hold the little match thing and then think about my worry and put it in this little bag and tie it up, and it was supposed to go away, but that never worked.
so you're saying this is a long-standing behavior of yours.
Yes.
Okay. So when did your parents start to realize that, hey, Emily's a bit more anxious than other kids?
I don't think they really. I think my mom noticed because she was the same way, but my dad didn't really. I don't
Okay.
think it was really on
Okay.
his list of priorities.
Yeah. How lonely were you, Emily?
Pretty lonely.
Yeah.
Even if I could have 100 friends over and still feel that loneliness inside.
Well, and again, I think for everyone out there is well familiar with myself in long-term recovery from drug and alcohol addiction, firmly entrenched in a 12-step world, and that's where I met Miss Emily and was so impressed on her, and I hope you will too as we go through her story, that the person in addiction knows loneliness like no other.
I would agree with that.
Okay. So even if when you were with your group of friends, maybe if you were laughing and joking and you were wearing the right clothes, what you're telling our audience is that you still didn't feel right. You still felt lonely.
Correct, yes.
Okay. How much energy did you put into having to be that imposter and think, boy, Emily's a really neat girl? I bet a lot of people thought you were pretty cool.
All my energy basically, and up until a certain age, I guess, it was all when I directed my energy elsewhere.
Right. So eventually, what happens out there is we need to compensate for these feelings of inadequacy.
Hmm.
So, what happened to you? Why don't you share with us? Some people do different things.
I would just get overly involved in things like if like I was a cheerleader and in dance and doing all these things and trying to I was like a people pleaser, so I would hang out with people that I really didn't even like just because they wanted to hang out or other people I was hanging out with wanted to hang out with them and ended up doing like getting into smoking weed and drinking because that's what everyone else was doing and I wanted
Hmm.
to do what everyone else was doing and still be like I wanted to be accepted still, so
You
that's
wanted to be accepted.
yeah.
Okay. So, one of the things that when we deal with is particular, and we often talk about this on this program, and I think it's very important, is that young ladies in particular begin to lose their self concept and self esteem around the age of 9 years old because they're subjected to so much outside influences about what they should or shouldn't be.
Yeah, I agree.
So, how did that affect you? I don't know what type of people you hung around with or wanted to be. What did you want to be? What did you believe you wanted to be?
Like when I grew up,
Yeah.
I wanted to be a nurse
Okay.
like my mom
Uh-huh.
because I've always been like really compassionate and always put to a certain extent put others before myself and was always worried about if everyone else was okay.
Uh-huh. So you put others before yourself. You wanted to make sure everybody was okay. But as quite often what we talk about on this show, if you've ever flown on a flight and the flight attendant comes out and they give the air mask instructions, who do they tell you to put it on first, Emily?
Yourself.
Correct. And that tells me that you were not doing that.
Oh no, definitely not.
How much time did you spend in your room alone?
More than I'd like to admit.
Uh-huh. Okay. So what was going on in there? What was the script going on inside of young Emily's head? What was the
I mean, I
conversation?
don't remember much, but I know like always thinking like of physical things like I'm too ugly, I'm fat, and just thinking like no one's ever gonna love me because I know as a young girl, like you want to grow up and want to get married and have children and all this stuff, and even like at a really young age, just thinking like I was never gonna be enough for that.
I was never going to be enough.
Yeah.
Okay. All righty. So, and then when we try to compensate for that, when we try to bury those thoughts and feelings, generally what do people turn to? You mentioned it earlier about beginning to smoke weed, doing drinking, doing whatever to fit in to make yourself feel okay.
Mhm.
So tell us about that. When did that start to enter into your life, Emily?
I was probably like 14 or 15.
Okay.
And that's when started with cigarettes
Mm-hmm.
at the movie theater trying to impress the kids I was around, I guess, like.
Mm-hmm.
And then I had an older brother who he was already like he was what 16 when I was 14, so he was like smoking weed and drinking with his friends,
Uh-huh.
and it turned him he was like socially awkward.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was younger, like for instance on vacation, I would like make friends with all the people that were staying in the houses around us, and then my brother would he was like super shy. And what I saw, um once he started like drinking and smoking, he like became popular, and it made him like this really cool kid. And that's what I wanted to be like. I wanted to feel as carefree as he looked like he was.
Oh, okay. Great. So naturally, you did what they did.
Mhm.
So how did that make you feel?
Good.
Yeah, sure it did. Okay, sure. Did you feel like you fit in then?
Yeah.
Did you feel like you could talk to people more easily?
Oh yeah, definitely.
Did you feel like you were more likable?
Yeah, I was more confident.
Mm-hmm.
Or I don't know if it was being more confident or just not really caring what people thought then at that point.
Okay. So and as everyone out there, and I'll say this, addiction's a progressive disease. Tell us how that went. Tell us how that went period of your life progressed.
Um, I mean, first it was just for fun and what kids did on the weekend, and that was good for like 2 years. And when I was 16, my brother passed away in a car accident, and that's when I started drinking and smoking weed, among other things, to not feel the pain that I was feeling, essentially, then.
So your brother passed away in a tragic automobile accident.
Hmm.
It's when you were 16. How did that affect you, Emily?
Oh, I might cry. um, the hardest part was watching my parents and experiencing their loss, like through, you know, nothing really compares to losing a child, I guess. And watching my parents both drank, so watching like the way that their lives turned into, you know, put the party parents into like the crying all night and punching walls and that kind of stuff. That affected me more than I think I let the losing my brother affect me. It was and I was trying to be strong for them because that's like what everyone said I should do, is be strong for my
So
parents.
everyone said you should be strong for your parents.
Hmm.
Was anybody strong for you? What type of a support system did you have,
I
Emily?
think my parents tried, but I always would just like, for the most part, act like I was okay because I didn't want to upset them, because I felt like selfish for grieving my brother because they lost their son, which I know has got to be, now that I have a
Mm.
child of my own, that has to be way more significant than the loss of a sibling.
Well, this is one thing that we try to impress upon everyone out there, that everyone's feelings and pain are special and unique. And the pain that you feel cannot be compared with anybody else's, or no one
Yeah.
can tell you that your pain isn't as significant as someone else. That's outrageous. How dare they?
Yeah, I know that now, but at the time, like, I turned 16 a month and a day before he passed away, so I was still like really, really young. Like, I don't even think, had I not been using, um, like smoking weed and drinking, I don't think that I would have, I don't think anyone that young can really fully properly grieve at that age.
That's
It's,
a great deal of insight that you're showing on your part. It shows us how you've developed some maturity
yeah,
through these years. Yeah.
shockingly.
So that sounds like a pretty turbulent time, pretty tragic, full of a lot of negative energy in that home.
Oh yeah, definitely.
So tell me how Emily dealt with that. I mean, your parents were going through their own particular grieving and hell. So tell us about you.
I just did whatever I could to not feel, and I am blessed that my brother had a few really close friends that kind of like stepped in, and not really stepped in because they always kind of, I think, looked at me as like their little sister they never wanted, but they really stepped in and gave me a lot of support for a good while until I, screwed that up.
Okay, screwed it up.
Yes. Eventually my, you know, smoking weed and drinking and doing other substances on occasion turned into like a daily thing, and was kept graduating to more serious drugs like heroin and all that kind of stuff. And I lost sight of like who I was and who was important to me, and burned a lot of bridges that way.
That's an important statement that you just said. I lost sight of myself and lost who I was. Could you say a little bit more about that? This is important that other people hear this.
Well, I just turned into a monster. Like, the person that I was before drugs in any form, really, and the person that I became while I was on drugs, especially heroin and cocaine, like, I was a monster. I didn't care about myself, so I couldn't care about anybody else. I didn't care. All I cared about was what I could get from you or what you could give me and what I could use you for, basically. And I'm not that person. That's not me.
Okay, that isn't you, and you had mentioned that earlier. So when we talk about that first step in 12-step recovery, admitted we're powerless and our life's unmanageable, I think you're describing that very nicely. The unmanageability of addiction is not the car wrecks and the broken health, the ruined relationships, the employment, the trouble with the law. It's losing who you are.
Yeah, I actually just reread something I had wrote a couple of years ago when I was in state prison, and I think that piece that I wrote there's no better description of my experience in addiction. But just basically like getting to the point where it's like I'm just like a shadow of who I used to be. Physically I'm the same person. Well, not really, probably like 50 pounds less, but being a stranger, like looking in the mirror, not wanting to look in the mirror because I don't recognize who I am, and the things that I do are just despicable. I wrote in this piece that I haven't really shared with anybody is like, you steal and thieve from other people, and then eventually you steal and thieve from yourself and end up selling yourself, whether it's physically or just like your soul for powder in a bag.
Please check out our website at fishingwithoutbait.com, where you can listen to the show, comment on our discussions, and find out where you can subscribe to our podcast. If you're interested in flying the colors of Fishing Without Bait, click the shop icon on our website. We have clothing, mugs, cell phone cases, and so much more. Show the world that you fish without bait. This show is a member of the Sorgatron Media Podcast Network. Find out more at sorgatronmedia.com.